Shut up and sit down.
The good bike rider is easy to recognize. He makes sure his bicycle is always in perfect mechanical condition. He learns how to ride and knows all the bicycle rules and traffic laws before riding on the streets.
Some people play basketball, some fly their kite. But as for me, there's only one thing I like, and that is to pedal with all my might when I'm riding my bike.
You pressed play and are now listening to the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von Duren. For your information, spending today complaining about yesterday won't make tomorrow any better. Enjoy the show.
Let's go riding on our bikes, there's so much to see. Let's go riding on our bikes, come along with me. Let's go riding on our bikes, come riding with me.
You can choose to take your finite time and energy and effort, and you can spend it complaining, or you can spend it playing the game hard, which is probably going to be more helpful to you in the long run.
Hi, and welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I'm Jake Von During, and I'm here with, who am I here with? Matt? Matt, you there?
Yeah, what's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? We are calling in today.
Do. Oh, it's actually working. I can hear you, Matt. That's awesome.
We got something.
Sorry, we had a little technical difficulty before kicking this thing off, but we're all here, and to his, we'll just say digital right, Mr. Lance Hepler.
It is Sir Lancelot the Silly coming at you from the van, driving over the river. Here I am. Yep, I'm in the van.
Are you going to go down by it?
I'm going down by the river. I'm in the van. And yeah, I'm on the phone.
All right, let's cut to the chase. Who wants to backpedal first?
Ooh.
Matt was the first one to talk.
Go for it.
Oh. All right, go.
Oh, me? I'm going? Okay. Yes, I spent the last week in Ketchum, Idaho. You got a good backpedal. Yeah, Sun Valley, Idaho area. I did the Rebecca's Private Idaho stage race. It was 3 different stages over 4 days. I had a blast. I had a great time. The stages, the first stage was a 45-mile stage that was half single track, half gravel. So it was, it was kind of made for the mountain bikers, but you had to use the same bike all week. You couldn't use a mountain bike for the mountain bike stage, and then you had to use the same bike. So
that's a cool challenge.
Yeah, she said you could change gearing and tires if you want, but you had to use the same frame for the whole weekend. So that's kind of cool. That stage is right down my alley. I love the single track. I love doing the single track on the gravel bike. I had a blast on it. I think there was 200 men doing the stage race. There was another 110 women. There was quite a few people doing the stage race, which is pretty awesome. But I ended up taking 20th overall.
Wow.
In that stage race. Yeah, I kind of went into it going, okay, I am going all out on this first stage, and then I'm just going to have fun the rest of the week because none of the rest of it is really up my alley. So I went full out on. I even beat some big names that I really had no business beating, like Molly Cameron. I beat her in the stage, and I really shouldn't have beaten her because she's quite fit and fast. And most of the pro women, I also beat. So, Piper, come here. Sorry, I had to stop. And the dog jumped out. Hey, come on. So, yeah, I had a great time. The next day was a 5-mile uphill time trial.
Dude, that's right in your wheelhouse.
That's not for me.
Oh, come on. That's right in your wheelhouse. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all me. And I just got crushed. It was just not my thing at all. So I had a good time. The way she did it is there was a 20-mile neutral rollout. So you had to ride 20 miles out there, do the trial, and then ride 20 miles back. And so you had to ride the whole thing. That was kind of part of the stage, but only the 5 miles was actually timed. And so, I had a great time. I ended up meeting all these really cool people. I had like conversations with Colin Strickland and with Phil Guyman and with Molly Cameron and Jake Wells and Peter Stetna and Matt Lieto. I mean, I had the like conversations with all these pros and all these cool people, and it was just really a whole lot of fun. All the women too that were doing so well, Rose Grant and Mariah Wilson, Casey Armstrong and Karen Jarko, all these great women I was able to meet and talk to as well. So it was very cool. I did not take 20th in the uphill time trial. I think I was like 46 or something. So, not so hot, but, there I was. So, Saturday was kind of an off day, which is kind of interesting the way they do it. I didn't have to, which is really cool. And then Sunday, was the big stage where it was a 103-mile gravel stage race at about 6,000 feet of climbing. Not a whole lot of technical stuff, and I kind of shine in the technical things. And so, dude, that's just not my thing. I'm good at like 3 hours.
Uh-oh. You still there, bud?
Did we lose him?
I don't know. Lance, you can't just drop out like that right at the Queen stage, man. We'll
On
see.
the Queen stage.
Yeah. Actually,
We'll just assume that he got dropped on the Queen stage like he got dropped on this call. We'll go from there.
Yeah, I did drop his call, so I'll try and call him back. So while we're doing that, Matt, why don't you go ahead and backpedal real quick? Oop, hold on. Hold on a second. Ah! Oh, gosh. I think everybody's back online here. Sorry, I'm pushing all the buttons and Lance is disappearing. So you're on the Queen stage. We were going to have Matt backpedal, and I muted him on accident because I was trying to get you back on the phone. You're on the Queen stage. Finish that.
Okay. Finally, I did the last stage, and I didn't really race very well. All the people I beat ended up beating me back. I was out there over 6 hours. I ended up coming in with Phil Guyman, which was really cool, but he was just kind of cruising it, and I was like going at 90% the whole day. But it was cool. We got to have a conversation and talk while we were riding a little bit, and that was all kind of cool. I ended up like 29th, I think, in GC overall, which was decent for me but I had a great time. My wife even did one of the shorter versions on the day. She did the gravel race also on Sunday, and so my kids came up. I had a great time. Ketchum was awesome.
That
Sun
sounds
Valley
like a
was great.
blast. Yeah, you stayed a few extra days too, just to kind of take it all in, right?
We just didn't have to rush back for anything, and so we just kind of stuck around.
Yeah.
The worst part was the AQI. It was smoky there the whole week, and it was hovering between 100 and 150 every day.
Oh.
So it was like borderline. Should we be racing? And some people chose not to race because of that, but I just still ended up just kind of going every day, and so there you go.
Yeah. That sounds like a blast, dude. But are you back home? Or did you enter the Hepler compound?
I am in the Hepler compound. I've pulled into the driveway. The house is still standing. Yeah.
Good. That's
Here
good
I
to
am.
hear. Cool. Hey, Matt, why don't you backpedal?
Okay, yeah, I can be pretty quick. I bike every day. I haven't missed a day yet. Biked this evening, so snuck that one in. And I did a ride on, been on the mountain bike a couple times with Camus Cross Country, Watopia quite a few times. A little bit of swimming, not much. I rode kind of out of Vancouver Lake a fair amount, just a lot of flat stuff. So I went out there on Sunday, and then I went again on Monday for the Beaches group ride.
Cool. How was that?
Same old. It was fun. My tubeless tires started to go flat. I didn't see any sort of sealant mark on them, but they lost a ton of tire pressure somewhere in the middle. I don't know where, but
When was the last
it
time you added
definitely was
sealant?
like
Yeah. When's the last time you put sealant in that?
when you guys put sealant in it.
Yeah, it's long overdue, buddy. Every like about 3 months or 4 months, you need to put like an ounce or so in there.
But it hasn't even been. I don't think it's been 3 months.
It's probably pretty close to that. I'm pretty sure. It was
Probably, yeah. It might be 3 months. It might be getting close. Well, probably not. I don't even think it's been 3 months.
Yeah.
But either way, it may have. I may have gotten a slight puncture. I mean, you know those roads that are horrible.
Yeah.
It may have gotten a slight puncture, and it may have sealed itself somehow. But yeah, it just needs to be topped off, I think.
Cool. That sounds...
Yeah. I rolled up on another cyclist that I kind of know from triathlon stuff and helped him change his tire on Sunday. And that's fun. Like, whenever you get to help someone, it's like the highlight of your day.
Yeah.
So that was huge.
Cool.
He like couldn't get a tire over the bead or whatever. And I was like, sweet, let me try, and nailed it first try. And I never felt prouder of myself. So
Awesome.
yeah, no major back pedal, no racing, no races in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's coming to a close here. Are you going to do some cyclocross, Matt? Are you going to give it one more go? The old college try one more time?
Mm-hmm. I'll have to consult with Lance on that.
Yeah. My back pedal real quick. It kind of like Matt didn't have a whole lot of much going on. We did do the flogging ride, which was awesome. It was the second to last one. We've got the last one coming up when this podcast comes out. Will be the following day on that Thursday. And that will be, I think, flogging ride 26 or 7 for the year. I got to go double check. But that's a lot of flogs that we did. And it was a blast. We had a good time with that. I rode with our juniors. Most of them were the juniors from the triathlon team, but that was a fun ride that we went and did on this past Saturday and had a blast. And then it was the Labor Day weekend. And what do you do on Labor Day? You work and you go break into other people's facilities and you steal bikes and parts from their shop again for the third time. This is getting old. Yeah, more to come on that another time. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's super frustrating. But for what it's worth, there's not much stuff left in the lab right now because it's either been taken or it's been removed from the facility because we're going to be moving into our new lab. We're going into phase 2. This has always been in the plans. It's something that we've been talking about. We're going to expedite the process. We're going to push it up, and we're going to go into a new place that we have been kind of keeping an eye on. And hopefully, if all things work out, we will be there sooner than later. But stay tuned for more information on that. In the meantime, stop breaking into our damn building. Urgh.
Gosh dang it.
Yeah, so...
So the plan is, I saw this and I didn't even know what to say. The plan is to move facilities then. That's the
correct
plan of attack. You can just move on and find another building.
Yep. And so the space that we were in has always been kind of what I've called an incubator space, and it was really just so that we could get the Dialed Endurance Lab, which Evan has been just kicking butt and taking names. He's doing such a fantastic job, and it was really just to prove that business model, and he's done that and then some. So the next phase, we're going to go ahead and kick into action and move into the new facility, which will pretty much double the footprint of what Evan and I are collectively using, which is going to be really nice because the Dialed Cycling Lab, it's got a lot of bang for its buck, but it's really not the biggest shop in the world, and we need a little bit more space to work out and or like do the things that we're doing. And as does Evan. Evan's doing more of the strength and conditioning stuff, working with the athletes, and to do that, you do need a little bit more room to work around, and he's going to be bringing on some more folks to work with him, which is awesome. He's already got people on board, and we're going to start doing that in a new location, not terribly far away from where we're at, but at the end of the day, it'll be far more security. Evan's going to move too, yes.
Wow.
So,
big changes.
Yeah. Do we need to carve a corner out for you too, Matt?
Yeah, I know, right? Carve a space. I need a YouTube studio, please.
Yeah, exactly.
All this stuff has been in the plans and in the works, since we moved into space we were in. We've just we haven't had a real big push to have to do it yet. And this kind of provided the push for us to do it. So
yeah, it's not the catalyst we wanted to have to do that, but
it's not.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about break-in talk. Let's jump into our topic for today.
That has been break-in talk.
Yeah. Lube. Maybe I need some lube after this past weekend. Ugh. Sorry, I had to work that in somehow. Bike lube. What you guys using these days? Just out of curiosity.
I use Squirt. It's a wax-based chain lube, a dry lube. We've probably talked about it before in the past, but I've used Squirt on all my bikes.
Yep, I've been quite the same. How about you, Matt? What have you been using?
I've been using Squirt in Rock and Roll Gold for a while. Trying to think if just paraffin wax I've used and had luck with that. I've used some other stuff too. There's like for like race stuff. I've used like it ends up being like the same thing. It's like a paraffin wax, but it's also there's other things that are mixed in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like molten wax kind of stuff.
Gotcha. I've been using
like races.
Yep, for the past probably decade, I've used Rock and Roll, I've used Demontech, and I've used Squirt. Those have been like the three primaries. I mean, I've used little other bits and pieces of lube here and there, but those have been the three primary ones that have always been on my workbench. And probably for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been using Squirt, and I like it. I like it quite a bit. And it was just, gosh, I don't know, in the past couple of days, I was scrolling through YouTube like I do, just kind of looking at stuff and researching and whatnot. And I happened across a video from a guy his channel is called Simply Mountain Biking, and he did a comparison test, and it's basically the title of the video was the ultimate bicycle chain lubricant test, best bike chain lube. So he was going to run this test. I'm looking at the guy. I'm like, all right, it kind of looks like he's just working out of his garage. I'm kind of curious what he has to say. Some of these things we carry, some of these things I use. And I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and watch this just to see what it's about. Granted, it's a little bit longer of a video. It's about 24 minutes and change. And I'm like, well, we'll see. If it's bad, I'll just bounce out and go check out something else. And it really kind of captivated my attention. However, I did kind of question a couple of little things, but I shared this with you guys, and I wanted you to watch it as well so we can kind of break this down. And I'm curious, what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I certainly thought that the process that he went through was unique. It isn't usually the way that lubes are actually tested, but he kind of came up with tests to figure out, how much, how well it what was the first test he did? It
was like the friction test, and he was using like a little machine.
The friction test. There's like the friction test, and then he also did one on like spray on how much like flipped off the chain when it was running fast, and and how much it picked up dirt, which I thought were unique ways to test.
And he actually applied the lubricant per the manufacturer's recommendations, and then did like a squirt test on it. So he had this spray bottle, and he sprayed, I don't know, it was like 30 some odd ounces of water over it, and then he weighed it before and after to figure out how. And he had a really like a scale that could weigh pretty small numbers, and he was able to determine how much of the lube actually came off once it had water hitting it. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well, like how much retention was it getting.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting too. So I mean, it was interesting the way he did the test. The way I like to have my lube is like, how many watts is it saving me?
Yep.
How many actual watts is it saving me? And that was one thing that he didn't do in his test, but it certainly was interesting to find out, how things work. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, he did. He was looking at the motor and to see. I was looking at those numbers kind of closely when he was doing that to see how much amperage was required on the motor itself, which should translate into like wattage, right?
Okay.
So again, I don't think that this is how chains are normally tested. I mean, granted, like all of this stuff is very like fringe science, right? Where it's like there's not a lot of locations in the world where they test chain lubricants, and so there are a few places, and they go through a pretty crazy process to like strip the chains completely clean, which his process for cleaning chains was not as thorough, obviously. And then the way that they do that is they actually hook it up to a drivetrain that can measure the amount of wattage that it takes to move the chain just through the drivetrain itself, and they can detect wattage differences that way. And I think that his system was awesome. It was very like I would say it's more than like DIY. It was I thought it was fantastic. Like, I immediately subscribed to the channel just because I was like, here's a guy who's trying to check this stuff, trying to, like, he's doing all the right stuff. He's questioning, like, the numbers. He's questioning the manufacturer's claims, right? Like, which we all know are bogus. And he was just trying stuff. And I just thought it was really, really cool, even though I don't think, and I don't think he would describe it this way either. I don't think it was, like, perfectly scientific, you know? But
Right.
it was cool to watch, for sure.
Did it change your mind on any of these lubricants that he was using? And do you guys have in front of you with the lubes that he actually used? So we can kind of break those down as well.
I definitely, like, one of the lubes that he liked a lot was the Muck Off Dry Lube.
Yeah.
And I would totally try that, like, based on his recommendation. I still tend to think that any lubricant that has some sort of paraffin wax base, and Muck Off Wax, their dry lube might have that in there. I don't know. But I think that those are going to tend to perform the best just based on, I would say, the more scientific stuff that I've read. So that would, you know, Squirt is definitely one of those, but there's others for sure.
Correct.
You know, Squirt performed very poorly in the friction test.
Yeah,
which
it did.
which really surprised me right off the bat. Like, the first test he did, you know, the lube that I love and use every day, you know, tested pretty poorly.
Yeah, but
just on the friction test. But yeah, go ahead.
On that friction test, it's 100% not doing it the way that the manufacturer recommends that you do it. I mean, he has this little friction wheel that's going around, and he's got a little piece of like a little round metal grommet or something like that. That's a softer compound than the wheel itself. So the wheel's not going to wear, but the softer grommet is. And that little grommet was what he was using to determine how much wear you were getting. So that wheel was going through a little reservoir where he poured in all of the different lubes. And the Squirt, you know, it was going through there and it was basically going on wet, but it wasn't allowed to dry and cure the way that it's supposed to be applied. The manufacturer, when you use Squirt, recommends and says that, you know, clean very well your drivetrain, get all the gobbledygook off of there, and then you want to apply it, and then you want to let it dry, and you're not supposed to use a towel to dry that off. You just want to let it dry and do its thing, and then you can start to do your friction test. So, I mean, yeah, if you're going to do the test the same for everybody else in that particular test because you're not following the manufacturer's recommendations, it's not going to be a valid test based on what the manufacturer's recommending. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's what kind of relieved me once I figured out, okay, this lube that I really like and that I've been using, and of course I want to defend the lube that I've chosen to use, you know, every day.
Yep.
You know, it performed really poorly on this first test, and so I immediately tried to find holes in the test that he was doing.
Yeah, I was kind of doing the same. Like, hey, wait a second, I like that stuff.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
that's right. And it ended up being one of his more favorite. It made like his top 5 lubes in the end.
Yeah,
because of how well it performed in the rest of it. But it was like, at first I'm like, oh, I'm questioning all my life choices. Yes, what have I been doing?
Yeah. So
I don't think that I would stress too much about it. I think that wax-based lubricants are going to just work differently. Like, when you get stuff and gunk and stuff like that on your chain, it's going to flake off which is just different. Like, remember when he did that, like, that spin test, and he was like, oh, the Squirt is weird. It's almost like these raised bumps.
Yeah.
Because he had, like, basically, like, wet wax on a chain, and then he spun it off, and it landed on the cardboard. And then guess what? It was like, you know,
the wax
like
dried.
dripping candle wax, right? Like, it's like the wax that dried. And it's like, basically what typically happens is when the wax has dried on your chain, and then you spin it, like, things flake off, just like wax, like, normally would flake off. And that's a good way to keep your chain fairly clean and keep things from getting in between those rollers, is having that wax barrier there and have stuff that gets in there just basically flake off. But that being said, I still think that there's room for improvement. There's room for other options.
Yep.
My gut feeling is that, you know, one of the things that he should potentially look into is like a different way to clean the chain in between all of these tests, and then definitely going by manufacturer's recommendations, because like when you do something that's truly like a wax kind of based lubricant, it is going to take that time to kind of harden or dry. Whereas the others don't.
Yeah. What would you recommend for cleaning it? Like an ultrasonic cleaner or a different method? Do you have something in mind, or is there something that you've seen?
The ultrasonic cleaners do really well, but the things that I've read that do better are like, it's kind of interesting. It's like a round of different sets of chemicals besides, like, you do your degreaser, but then you also do, I think they do like mineral stuff, and then you basically like shake it in like a Gatorade type bottle. I know it sounds like totally hackish, but ends up your chain ends up a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
And typically what you want to do is you want to make sure whatever the manufacturer puts on it is cleaned off on a like when the chain first comes out, which seems counterintuitive because, I mean, I typically just like, whatever, let's roll. I don't want to work on chains all the time. But that stuff is notoriously bad. It's great for like keeping your chain long term if someone's keeping these chains on their shelves for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily great for,
performance
or, even durability of, keeping the chain living a long time, if someone puts it on their drivetrain and just rolls it, which is, I know this sounds so stupid and posh, but it's like a chain is like $100, right? Or, I mean, some of these chains are more than that, but like, it's in the scheme of bike stuff, I don't feel like it's the most expensive thing to replace, right?
Yeah, where are you buying your chains for $100, buddy?
How much are you spending on chains?
Well, a brand new Force chain MSRP for the bike that you have is $35. That's MSRP.
Oh, yeah. I need to get a new chain, man. Might as well get a new chain now.
And I think the Dura-Ace, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 70, I think. And and
for the red.
Yeah, for the red, if I'm not mistaken. I said Dura-Ace, sorry. They're
it is. Dura-Ace is the same, right? It's like
they're about 50 or 60 or 70 bucks somewhere. But anyway, a Force chain for $35, that's not bad, and those things last for a long time. But keeping them clean for performance reasons is definitely going to be in everybody's best interest, and not for nothing, keeping it clean too is going to help preserve the length and life of your drivetrain.
Yeah.
So let's
right now my chain is in a bad place.
Let's go through the players real quick. We didn't really go through all of the different ones that he tested. I'm just curious if anybody out there is using any of these things, especially the last two. The first one, we've already talked about, the Muck Off Dry Lube, and they do have a wet lube as well, but the dry lube is the one that he tested. Rock and Roll Gold, Purple Extreme, Squirt, which we've been talking about, White Lightning Epic Ride, a Demontech Original, the Park Tool CL1, and the Rock Ride Epics, if I'm not mistaken. And then he also threw in there, just kind of for grins and giggles, just to see how it would compare, WD-40. And then he just had some 10W30 small engine oil from John Deere that he decided he was going to check and see how that did against everything else as well. So let's kind of fast forward through some of these other tests with all of these things. Was there a test in there that kind of resonated with you guys other than the one that we've already talked about?
Well, I think a lot of people, I think the WD-40 is a good one to test because a lot of people do just grab it and throw it on there. It was one of the more affordable options, right? And people have it in their garage. And, if you think about it, like a lot of the people that come into your shop, I mean, I don't know if the people listening to this podcast would be the same way, but I think a lot of the people coming into your shop are going to be, moms and dads and things like that. And they just want to like, oh man, my kid's bike is starting to squeak a lot. What do you do?
Yeah.
And I don't really fault them at all for grabbing WD-40 and being like, this will stop the squeak.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. That's what WD-40 is synonymous with. If it's something that's squeaking, you put some WD-40 on it and you're good. And I still use it too. Like get a hinge on a door or something like that that's squeaking, throw some WD-40 on it and all of a sudden it's nice and quiet. So is that going to work?
Have you ever? Yeah. Have you ever like thrown like some sort of chain lube on something where it's like not supposed to, and you're like, well, think about this, like a wax-based, you're like a wax-based chain lubricant will do a good job of keeping this hinge.
My chair.
I don't think I've used it on hinge.
My chair that I'm sitting in right now, it was one of those things that rocks back and forth, and it slowly developed this creak, and it drove me absolutely bonkers. And I went out and there was just some chain lube. I didn't even go out. I was in the office because in my office is a bike trainer, and next to the trainer was my lube. And I'm like, I'm just gonna put a couple drips on there, and sure enough, it worked.
Oh yeah, it'll totally work. Yeah, and I've thought about this too. I'm like, and theoretically, if this is going to protect it from different elements and things like that. I always think about like chemically or whatever. Is this going to be helpful or is this going to be bad?
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so some of the other tests that he did was the sand test. I thought that was kind of interesting because from a gravel mountain biking perspective, that's something that always has kind of bounced around in my head. And I've thought about that too because I've had the Demonotech. I think I bought like a case of that stuff like a decade ago, and I've had it sitting around for a long time. And I think I just used the end of it because I took it in the lab and we put it on people's chains when we clean them up and sometimes. But I would put that on my chain, and thinking about it from a mountain biking perspective, I always wondered like, hey, what's not going to stick to my chain? Because if I'm going to put something on there and it's going to stay wet and somewhat tacky, it's just going to be a magnet to dust and dirt. And if that's glomming onto my chain, then that's going to decrease the efficiency and decrease power output, which it's not a huge thing, but everything adds up in the end. So I started getting away from using that Demonotech and using the squirt and letting it dry, knowing that it's going to be theoretically a little bit drier of a lube. Did you guys find any merit in that test they did with the sand test, where he was putting on a piece of paper the lube, and then he was pouring over, I think it was like 3 ounces of sand, and then doing a little tap test, consistent amongst all the different ones, and was weighing the paper and the sand collectively to see which one held onto the most sand. What are you guys' thoughts on that test?
It certainly was enlightening, because if you're in like sticky, muddy conditions, or even like dusty, sandy conditions, and your lube is going to stick, you're just going to destroy your chain. You're going to destroy it. And so that certainly was interesting. One of the things that, me as a squirt user, it's a dry lube. You're supposed to let it dry. I have to try to remember to add the lube the day before, or when I'm finishing with the ride, instead of 30 seconds before I take off down the trail, which is really what happens, 80% of the time. Is I clean the chain and then re-lube it, right before I take off, which is not what you're supposed to do. So that's interesting.
Matt, you're a big time mountain biker. What are you using on your mountain bike?
Yeah, I'm a mountain biker. I think I just use whatever is like, I'm trying to think if it's like what's currently on my bike stand in the garage, and it's either same thing. Like I don't like use a different lubricant on mountain biking chains versus anything else, and maybe that's because I'm not smart enough. But like, I didn't love his sand test. I didn't think it was, I think it's not going to give you the same flake off kind of concept that you would get from, a wax-based chain. But like, I just don't know. Like if you put candle wax on there or like paraffin wax on there, and it wasn't completely dried, and then you put sand on it, it would hold on to all of the sand, right, and add a ton of weight. But like, we know that paraffin wax is a very good bike lubricant for chains, but it has to be like dried completely, and then it needs to like flake off, because the chain basically rotates through the whole drive chain. So that I don't think that test was fantastic, because I don't think it was very representative of real world scenarios. But that doesn't mean it was, bad. It was something. Like, you're still looking at like, lubricants holding onto sand. So I don't know. Is the answer to that one.
I think it has some merits, but I think that, like you said, it's not like 100% like valid. I still think there's something to be said though about using a dry lube and using something that's not going to have as great a likelihood as, some of these other wetter, stickier, tackier ones. Like if I go up and touch if my chain's perfectly clean, and then I apply squirt and I walk away and let it dry, and I go up and touch that, there's really not going to be much left on my finger. If I do the same thing with like Demonotech and I go up and touch it, my finger's gonna be slimy and greasy and oily. So, right. And knowing that, if I'm riding through some dusty terrain, if I'm riding through some sandy creek bed or something like that, chances are stuff's going to stick to the stickier stuff, right?
Yeah. I all of this stuff is super interesting. It's hard to know, like, even with this test, like, I still would want to be like, I almost want to have like an expert come on this stuff and kind of explain it to us. Because I think this is, there's real science behind this stuff for sure. Viscosity of oils and things like that, basically, like, there's such a science to it.
I don't disagree. So maybe this will be our little catalyst to get somebody to join us. What was the last test that he did? He went through and did the squirt bottle test that we talked about and checked to see like if there was corrosion or how much of the actual lube stayed on the actual chain after being taken through the squirt test. I thought that there was probably some merit to that, and especially for us people who live here in the Pacific Northwest and are looking down the barrel of another fall and winter coming up here a lot faster than it should be, and it's going to start raining. We ride in those conditions all the time. So, how long is our chain going to last in this weather? And we all know that, like, we'll go out and lube our chain and we'll go ride through the crappy weather, come back, and if you don't clean your bike up and dry it and put some lube on after you ride, you're going to come out the next day and chances are your chain's going to have some rust on it, which is never a good thing. You guys dealt with that before?
No. Yeah, I mean, certainly I've dealt with rust on the chain. That's something you don't want to experience. It just makes it squeaky and not good, and it lessens the life of the chain as well. But so I mean, his little reminder about all that is certainly good. But the lube I like performed really well in that test. So I guess that made me happy that I used squirt.
Yeah.
I want to try the muck off though. Have you guys tried that? I haven't tried it.
You know what? I've been ordering it and I've had it. And just as a little side note, the more I use different muck off products, the more I'm impressed with that company. I thought that they did a really good job of like marketing. They've got really clever, catchy thing. Muck off. I mean, just the name itself is kind of clever and catchy, and it's like a little edgy and whatnot. Haha, and they've got all of the different stuff and it looks neat, and they've got some bright colors. I'm like, they're doing a good job there. And I've used a couple of things, and we've been like at the lab, I'll order all kinds of stuff, and before we put it on the shelf, I'll generally start to put it over on the workbench so that we can try different things. And mostly it's like cleaners and degreasers. And just recently we started bringing in more of their lubes because I've heard good stuff about it and people have been liking it. So I personally haven't tried it yet on my personal bike, but we've put it on a few bikes at the lab, and so far so good.
Yeah, I definitely want to try. I actually want to try all of the lubes that he talked about. It's like, I haven't tried that one. Like, that looks like it's got certain properties that would work well in certain riding conditions, right? Like, I think that's the other thing is, riding on a sunny day or whatever, you might want to have some sort of different lubricant than, on a cold, gross winter rainy day or something like that. But
yeah, for sure. So he did all of his tests. I think we've pretty much covered all of them. And then he lines up all of the different products that we've talked about. And he starts to do this like process of elimination and gave his reasons why. What would you guys think the first two to disappear would be?
I thought it'd be WD-40 and regular motor oil.
I was the same, and I'm sure Matt was in the same boat as well. Regular motor oil beat out one of the contenders in his test, that is. So it was if I'm not mistaken, it was the Rock Ride Epics, if I'm not mistaken. He kicked that one to the curb pretty quickly with the WD-40. Those were the two worst. He's like, without question, these were by far the worst ones. They're better than nothing, but those were the first two to go. And then he proceeded to kick out a few more, and the next one to go was going to be the motor oil and the Park Tool chain lube. That one got the boot too, saying that was pretty terrible. Again, his test, his opinions, and that's kind of where we were at. Any surprises there?
Hey, I'm surprised at the Park Tool one, to be honest with you. I mean, they make some pretty good stuff, and they have pretty good, a big company behind them, and it sounds like they made a crap scrap chain lube.
Yeah, I like all of their tools. I think they're fantastic. I think they make really good tools. Maybe a touch overpriced on some of them. Some of them, like the more proprietary specific ones, are definitely overpriced. But I've never been a big fan of their cleaners, their lubricants, and things of that nature. So that actually didn't surprise me. That's just my personal opinion, but that didn't surprise me too much.
Interesting. Yeah, I was definitely surprised that it tested as bad as it tested. I would have thought that they would have done something decent there.
So fast forwarding, the next one to get the boot was the Demonotech. That surprised me, because that's, if I'm not mistaken, when he first started the video, he also, when he was introducing each one of the lubricants, he talked about what the cost was, and that one was by far and away the most expensive of all of the different lubes that he had, and they were all pretty much about the same number of ounces. I think it was about like 4 ounces, if I'm not mistaken. So that kind of surprised me, being the most expensive and being something that I'd used for quite some time and actually quite liked. I thought that it was pretty good stuff, but it got the boot. So it didn't get a rose to move on in this competition. Any surprises from you guys, or are you guys not having much experience with those?
I've never used it.
Yeah, I've never used it either, but it tested really well in the first test, which is, again, it was kind of a test of durability as well as a test of, wattage, for rotation. And so that one did the best in that particular test. It won that particular test. And so I thought that was interesting. And I was like, man, I've never even tried this stuff. So,
yeah, there was hardly even a wear mark on that. I'm like, oh man, maybe I need to go back to that, thinking that when I was watching the video.
Exactly.
And then, that same wear mark, with that one being almost nothing, on some of the other ones, like the Squirt was actually not good. And it was like, oh man, that's a bummer, but we already talked about that. So fast forwarding through this whole process, it was down to 5. We had the Rock and Roll, we had the Squirt, we had the Muck Off, and we had the Epic Ride, if I'm not mistaken. Oh,
I think so, yeah.
I think is that the one that I was saying that was the one that already got kicked off? I don't know. I'm getting confused here. But anyway, and then we had the Purple Extreme. The next two to go were going to be Squirt and the Epic. Those were the two that. Hold on here. I'm looking back through my. Almost looks like, I don't know if it's a typo, but anyway, long story short, those two got the boot. And I was kind of sad to see the Squirt go kind of like you guys did, but it did make the top 5 of, what was it, 10 that included WD-40 and the John Deere 10W30. Any thoughts on that little process? Have you guys used that other one, the Epic stuff?
No.
I haven't either. No. Okay. I've used White Lightning and Tort pretty much.
Okay, and then it came down to the final 3, and that was your Rock and Roll, that was your Muck Off Dry Lube, and that was the Purple Extreme. I've used the Rock and Roll. I've used the sparingly. I've used the Muck Off. Have you guys used Purple Extreme before?
No.
Yeah, so that was kind of a
I want to try it.
Yeah, it was a new one for me too. I think that might be worth bringing into the lab to check out. And it's kind of neat. He's got his little podium stacked up here with a bunch of cassettes that he puts all the different ones up there. And the clear winner, according to him, was the Muck Off Dry Lube. That was the #1 best chain in all his different tests. And he
after looking through all the categories.
Yep, and he said he's going to be using that on his mountain bikes from here on going forward. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then taking second place was the Rock and Roll Pro Gold, and then the not last place, but the third place was the Purple Extreme. How do we feel about this, guys?
Well, there's some new lubes I want to try. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. So before we started the podcast here, we were kind of getting some stuff put together, and Matt was looking at some of his follow-up videos. And one of them that he did was on the Squirt, and it was because he was getting a lot of feedback in the comments section about him not following the manufacturer's recommendations for application and use of the Squirt. Matt, did you finish watching that whole video through?
No, I didn't finish watching it, but it seems basically like you're still getting the same type of result.
Okay. So
he basically did I think he let it dry for 2 nights or something like that, and then tried to do some of the same tests, and was getting the same kind of stuff or similar, like that wear scar test.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I'm thinking like that test immediately is going to scrape off the wax, and then you're basically just metal on metal.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I don't know how a wax-based chain would work on that one. It really needs, I think that the more like viscous lubricants are going to work better on that particular test. That doesn't mean, maybe that means that they are better lubricants, but I mean, it's just interesting that the testing protocol, but yeah, he did retest that, and you guys can find this. We'll post links somewhere along the lines of the podcast where you guys can visit this guy's channel. I subscribed. I think it was cool that he's actually testing stuff, but he did retest it. The original video was about 3 months ago. He retested the squirt lubricant about 1 month ago, and saw similar results. So I don't think he's changing his rankings.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, we'll post up a link to his channel, but if you want to just go look in the show notes for this particular episode, we will have his channel name as well as the title of the video that he's posting up. Hey, Lance, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Will you be changing the lube that you use when you go out mountain biking and gravel riding?
No.
No, not going to switch over and try the muck off dry stuff?
Well, I'm curious to try the muck off stuff. I definitely want to use it, but I'm still pretty happy with how the squirt ended up on the test.
Yeah, so am I. But
And it's significantly cheaper, right? I mean, I think that we really need to take costs into effect. I mean, maybe we can afford to spend a little bit more than WD-40 money, but like, I don't know. I don't want to. I think Ceramic Speed makes this, like, I can't remember what they call it, but they're like ultra lubricant thing, and I swear it's like $200 for like a bottle of chain lube. It's something stupid. I'll look it up while we chat. But it's. I mean, none of us wants to spend stupid amounts of money on chain lubricant. So, and muck off is kind of. I feel like they do it. They make great stuff, but it is expensive.
I think the muck off is only like $11 or $12 for the bottle that he was using. Which
and what's the lube, like $6? So.
Well,
half the price of that.
Some of the other lubes that were tested pretty low on his testing scales were a little less expensive. I think they were in that like $6, $7, $8 range. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you're talking about just a couple bucks, not the end of the world. It's not like we're comparing a $100 lube to a $5 lube. I think they're all within a reasonable amount of money from each other. But yeah, if you were penny pinching and you're looking to save a few bucks for the lube that's going to last you for probably a year or two, you could do that if you wanted to.
Well, I'm contradicting myself because earlier I said, chains are only like $100. You buy this. But yeah, I do think that, chain lubricant, like, you kind of you don't want something that you're going to cry about if the bottle gets spilled. I don't know.
That's true. All right. Well, I think I'm going to say that I'm going to stick with the squirt as well. And I think I'm going to give that muck off dry stuff a go. I'm going to give that a shot on the gravel bike and the mountain bike and see how it does. Should be fun. Anything else you guys want to talk about on this? This actually proves that we can talk about anything too. We talked about bike lube.
The UFO chain lubricant from Ceramic Speed is $45 for a pretty small bottle. Let me see.
Oh my gosh.
6-ounce bottle.
Wow.
$45.
That's pricey. Yeah, I think I might pass on that, but unless it's going to like give me an extra like 40 watts, but I'm going to pass.
It does. It gives you 140 extra watts.
Oh gosh, I'm going to take my money.
Okay, now I'm buying it. Yep.
Cool. Let's jump into one last thing. Matt, you want to start us off? What you got coming down the pipeline?
Yeah. Okay, so I posted another one of those 10 hacks video last week. You guys can check it out at your leisure. YouTube.com/MLegrand. It's really short, so if you want to know some quick hacks for triathlon racing, I did one of these a while back. It was triathlon training hacks, and this one's triathlon racing hacks. And it's under 2 minutes, so it's not going to take a lot of your time. However, a longer video that will be coming up this week is going to be Garmin Forerunner 55, which is Garmin's more affordable watch. And it's a video. It's a watch that I really like a lot. And it's kind of like the idea for the video is like, what are you missing when you buy this cheaper watch versus spending $500 or $600 on a more expensive watch? And it's not much, right? Like there's you don't have onboard music and you don't have mapping on the watch and you don't have this and that, but like it's still a really good watch at a better price. So that's the video that's coming up as soon as I can get it out. Realistically, it'll probably be Friday before I get it out, but I'd love it if it was tomorrow. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I've seen your video, the hacks pop up in my feed. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because I've been watching other stuff. Nothing against you. I watch all of your videos. Just out of curiosity, though, if you don't spoil it too much, but is there anything in there that's a hack that relates to the, I don't know, the bicycling part of the triathlon stuff?
I think I say if you're racing, triathlon, that you can leave your shoes on your bike. You can rubber band your shoes so that you can kind of dive into them pretty quick. A lot of them are like, kind of transition type hacks and stuff like that.
Cool.
I don't know. No one's watching that video. It's kind of a bust. You're not the only one that has skipped that video. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. I'll watch it. I promise.
It's funny. Some people are like calling me out on other places and they're like, oh, I love that video. And I'm like, you are the third person that watched it because no one else watched it. But I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. That's not the same one that came out recently with you and the thumbnail art, like floating in a Speedo, is it? Like, I think there was one of you swimming or something like that. Maybe about some goggles or something. I don't know. There was a video that keeps popping up. I'm like, why?
I had a goggle video sometime in the past 3 or 4 weeks.
I don't think I've seen that one yet. It keeps trying to recommend it to me, and it's you in a pool, like wearing a Speedo. And I'm like, why is Matt like in a Speedo on this thumbnail on my TV when I'm trying to watch YouTube videos?
Okay, just for the audience, there are no videos that I can think of me in a Speedo. So I'm guessing that might be a different video that we're recommending to you based on your other watching habits.
Oh no! All right, now I gotta clear my my cache.
Clear your browser history.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to check on that, Matt, because I swear it was you. Maybe it was DC Rainmaker. I don't know. One of you Foolios was
one
up
of the
there.
triathletes. That's the problem is you start watching my videos and they're going to recommend other triathlete videos, and there's going to be guys in Speedos.
No, it is. It's guided workouts right in your goggles and form goggle giveaway. Granted, you're not wearing a Speedo, but you're wearing some tight shorts and you're topless and you're floating and you're like looking at me underwater with goggles on. So
people were looking at that and they were like, "Oh, you're this is a reference to the Nirvana baby whatever." I'm like, I wasn't planning on it being that way, but yeah, sure.
That's the video I was talking about. So, and you posted that 2 weeks ago. Fun times.
You want me to? I'll put a shirt on for you. I'll swim with a shirt on for you if that helps.
Is that water cold, Matt?
Yep.
Sorry.
Obviously.
Hey, Lance, you got one last thing for us?
Yeah. I am headed to Central Oregon this weekend for the next cyclocross race in our series. It is called Can Chaser Cross. It's being held in Redmond, which is right next to Bend. Bend has been inundated this last week with smoke. It has had AQIs over 300 all week. And so we're hoping that the smoke will clear before the race on Saturday morning and it'll be safe enough to race. Because if it's over 175, I'm not racing. That is not good for your lungs.
Yeah. It's funny. No. When I went outside this morning, it looked like it had almost rained a little bit last night, but it was also a situation where there was a bunch of ash as well. And I don't know, Matt, if you dealt with that or saw that or noticed that on your vehicle this morning when you went outside.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah. So
I didn't know. I was like, why is my car so dirty? I was like, did my wife drive this somewhere?
Yeah. And I asked my wife the same thing when she got home this morning. She's like, I need you to put windshield wiper fluid in there. My windows are disgusting and there's no fluid and I can't see out of them. I'm like, where did you go? And they came back in the driveway. I look at her car and your car's filthy. Why is it so dirty? It wasn't so dirty the other day. And sure enough, that's what it was. I think there was some sort of heavy condensation or maybe light rain, but it was after the dust had, or not dust, but the ash had settled. So that was kind of a bummer. Even though this morning it was nice. I didn't really notice too much smoke, but I think it did get a little bit worse as the day went on.
Interesting.
Yeah. Cool. My one last thing was actually a question that I was going to ask to Matt, and he kind of already alluded to some of this stuff. My son has been hitting me up. He wants to get a Garmin watch. He wants to start wearing a watch just to be a little bit more responsible and all this stuff. But he's also doing track and field for his middle school, and he's wanting to get into running, and he's also wanting to use the watch for when he rides his bike. He's just thinking that that'll be easier for him than a bike computer. What would Matt Legrand recommend to my son?
Well, he'll have to watch my video coming out this week about the Forerunner 55.
Yeah.
Would be an excellent option for him,
Do you
sure.
think, is that a good one for loading bike metrics
yeah.
and doing the whole bikey thing?
So it will lack the power meter metrics. There are things that you can do so there's workarounds. I mentioned this in the video coming up, but you can so it has Connect IQ,
Yep.
which is Garmin's kind of like third-party app system.
Sure.
For those of you guys that don't know what that is, but you can do things like use the third-party app system, the Connect IQ system, to download an app that can look at power data coming across from your power meter. However, the watch itself does not have the standard sensors for power meters. So later on, that watch might not be great for him if he gets into power meters and stuff. However, I'm guessing that if he does get that far into cycling, he'll probably have a bike computer, like an out front bike computer that he would have that data for anyway.
Yeah, he kind of already does. He's got an old 520 of mine that is at his disposal.
Right?
So yeah,
exactly. Like these kids and their parents, right? My kids can they come into my office and they pick out like a new watch each day, and they're like, I'm going to count my steps. But yeah, I mean, I think that the 55 would be a great option for him.
Mm-hmm.
Another option would be, something like an Apple Watch or something like that, because there's benefits to being able to track your kids and communication and stuff like that. So
gotcha. Something there. All right. Well, I'll definitely keep that in mind. What about the 245? Is that a little bit too spendy, a little bit too much?
It's $100 more, and I don't think it's worth it. So what? $300 you get like the base model, and then I think for $350 you get onboard music and stuff, which he might care about, but he's probably gonna have his phone with him anyway, and if he's listening to music, he's probably not gonna do it on his watch. I don't think it's worth it. I think Garmin will update the 245 with something like the 255 in the next, I don't know, 6 months. It may be a while, but I still think that that's like one of those models that's just not something that I would personally pick out. I know other people would disagree with me. That, and there's something called like the 6. I think it's the 6. It might be the 645. Or something. It's just like kind of behind the times, and that's another one that I probably wouldn't recommend for people right now. It's like Garmin needs to update that one so that it kind of catches up with what they've done with their other stuff. And the actual battery life on the 55 is better than the 245. You get like 2 weeks of that's not exactly true, but like you get like 2 weeks of general usage out of the 55, and you only get about a week out of the 245. Oddly enough, if you're doing like long GPS activities, you might get more out of the 245 than the 55. But this is total insider baseball. But I think the 55 would be a good option for him.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, he also asked me about the Venue, if I'm not mistaken, and the Vivo Active 4. Do you think that those would be viable?
Both. Yeah, absolutely. They tend to be a little bit more like smartwatch-ish, if that makes, I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, my wife uses the Vivo Active 3, and she loves it. She likes touchscreen, all the little things. They're different. They're kind of targeting different markets. And I don't think that's a bad thing for him to consider, because yes, he's going to run with it. Yes, he's going to do that. But like, if you're really into running, the 55 makes a lot of sense, stuff like that. But if you're doing more different types of activities and things like that, Vivo Active might be a good option.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at those and see what's going to be the best option for him. We'll have him watch your video.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I need to order some. There's this Venue Square that's like really popular. It's very similar to an Apple Watch. So that one is very cool. The screens on those tend to be brighter. They use like AMOLED screens, and I haven't done any testing on any of those watches on my channel, but they're nice.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's about it, boys. It's getting a little late. We got to get this thing posted for the people before it hits midnight, because we need to maintain the streak of posting every Wednesday for
keep the streak alive.
185 weeks. Yeah. Cool beans. All right. Well, Lance, welcome back home. Matt, thanks for your time. Gentlemen.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. To everybody out there listening.
Pleasure.
Yep. To everybody out there listening, we really do appreciate you coming back for another podcast. We'll be back next week. Until then, bye for now.